Okay, hi guys. I'm here in Reading today. I'm outside Thames Water headquarters, Clearwater Court in Reading, in Berkshire. In this live event, I'm going to be talking about the company Thames Water that supplies water to businesses, domestic addresses, schools, hospitals, universities, that sort of business, that sort of utility company. The reason for being here is because the company is in serious difficulty. It's not always been that way, but in recent years, it has found itself in financial trouble. So I'll be going through some of the particulars over that story. I've known about Thames Water for a long time, actually, since before I started as a journalist. I have been looking at Thames Water. I've been considering what it does, some of its business activities. That wasn't in a negative sense. It was actually just to learn about how business has a presence here. Obviously, its customer base is extensive. It involves millions of people. It involves a logistical exercise of trying to get water to lots of different addresses. It also involves ongoing mechanical work to fix pipes, to help us during times when there's droughts, there's low rainfall, which often has been the case here in England. And also involves having to deal with the issues of costing, how much it costs for people to use it, and also home visits. It's a very interesting part of a company's service if it has to also visit you in your home at your residential address. That also opens up a whole new frontier in running a business. It's one of the reasons why I looked at it at the start of my working career as a journalist. I've gone into lots of different business and environments, corporate environments before, and I thought I would look at one that is supposed to be inoffensive. Serving out water to people is a straightforward exercise that has to be done. That also means that it could be open to manipulation, it could be open to abuse because we need it, because there is an urgency behind having a water supply. It means that it's of a more sensitive nature. Its business activity is more sensitive. It needs a large amount of security, also to make sure that the water supply isn't poisoned, and also it needs regulating so that other sources of water that also serve the natural environment aren't polluted. Hang on a little. And hi, Krista. Hello. What's up? Hang on a little while. So I began these live events just to cover some things in more detail, mostly about crime. This is also relevant to the issue of crime. I'll go into that in some detail shortly. It's not accusation against staff members in particular. Yesterday, or at least today on the Conservative news site, there is an article about Thames Water. It says the extent of time that I've spent looking into it before, episodic investigations into what had been going on, finding out that its staff were not all to blame for what had been unfolding, but there were other issues too. I've spoken to people on the periphery of this company's existence, not those who have worked for it formally or currently, but those who also know about it. They are not necessarily journalists, but they have told me some interesting stories about what goes on before anything even gets to Thames Water in terms of groups, missions, in terms of spying operations that are launched against our core utility companies. Now, this is a private company. That's part of the story of its debt. It serves water as part of its own business activity. However, water is something that is necessary to our existence, and therefore it is of intense interest to hostile states, to hostile groups, to private, secret groups, to people that hack. Hacking attempts have been known to have been made against Thames Water before. It happens to be the company that's doing it. Even if it were a different company name, even if it were a different board, those attacks would still have been launched because it's water. And so that puts pressure on anybody who's trying to run a utility business like this, in the sense that you may have to be briefed on hacking attempts. There may be attempts to infiltrate, to put chemicals into some part of the system. There may also be attempts to shut down parts of the system, which is also a frequent problem that utility companies have across the world. There are groups that try to shut down water supplies nearly continuously. The fact that we suffered mainly with low rainfall, usually we have a water supply apart from a mechanical fault, is to the credit of those who defend us from those who try to shut down the water supply. But I've been told that these different efforts are separate, so it's not possible to shut down hacking, attempts to take money, attempts to shut down the system, attempts to infiltrate with chemicals. Those are separate activities. They don't come under one type of authority or command. So it can be confusing. It can be worrying too if a water company comes under severe attack by more than one actor. So, as I said, there's an article on conservativenewssite.com. It's called The Rate of Thames Water. I haven't used that word lightly. It was actually used uh, in a conversation with me by somebody who used to work in a senior position for the company. He also used it in a serious way. It was just a way of trying to describe how many different people try to take advantage of simple businesses that have a simple product to serve up. You'd imagine that most Thames Water executives want to be concerned with getting water to us, not with getting out of the way of a nefarious criminal gang, which they've had to do before. Um, there was one instance in which a small number of staff had to be escorted out of a situation in which it looked likely they were going to be held hostage. It had nothing to do with anything they'd said or done. They had not triggered or incited the situation. As I said, it's just about those who wanted to do it. They had an agenda against some of our water supply companies here in the United Kingdom. And so they attempted an event on Thames Water, and some of its staff had to be escorted out of that situation for their own safety. It is water, remember. Similar product would be foods. It's stuff that we need. It's essential to our existence. Any crime gang worth its salt will think about how to try to attack water supply in the United Kingdom. It can often play a role in their broader efforts to crack open bigger sources of income from their current activity if they can also attack a utility company. So the amount of time that takes up, the amount of distraction it causes, the interruption from security briefings and also alternative security measures, that creates a lot of disruption in any working environment. It means that an office can be in disarray at times because of external forces. And that explains to some extent why there may have been confusion in boardrooms at Thames Water. It may explain to some extent why staffing has been difficult for them, and also keeping control over certain aspects of their business activity, because they have been interrupted or inundated with multiple attacks on their type of activity, which is getting water to us. I mean, the supply of water needs to continue. Um, Whatever happens to Thames Water from now, whether it's saved by private firms or whether it goes public, I mean, that isn't something that I've got insider information on. but its activity will continue, and it will continue to be an issue that people want to disrupt water supply in the UK. Now, that branches into the military. I've been told by an army source that it's very important that the British Army is involved in keeping our water supply safe. There are many different reasons why it's necessary to do that. And in fact, if there is a successful attempt on our water supply anywhere in the country, there are multiple reasons why it would be a national emergency were it to be successful. It's very important also to watch any changes in these types of businesses. It can indicate what has been happening. I know that a number of private equity firms, as I believe they're called, have been interested in trying to take it over. That would imply some of the steep hills that Thames Water have had to climb in terms of difficulties, in terms of operational management. If they're aiming in that direction, it would mean that they've not been as confident always as they like to get across. It must have been very difficult. However, on the other hand, I know that some people have acted up inside Thames Water. I know that individual staff members, I mean, it would be a handful, but less, five or less, individual staff members have tried to take advantage of those difficult situations. Now, they're not to blame for the overall context or the situation that Thames Water is in right now, but it is something that needs to be factored in when these types of events happen in business. That some people try to cause trouble anyway. They try to leverage the situation, and colleagues will find those people difficult. Managers will find them unmanageable, and life could be insufferable for some time. But that's just part of company or corporate culture. Um, but let's not imagine that working in water is simple. Let's not imagine that it's a day out in the park. It can be stressful. It can be mentally challenging. It can also be confusing if you've got lots of different challenges, both technical and also human challenges at the same time, as crime is a human challenge. Sometimes you've got a lot on your plate. And so working in water, it being an essential life support for life in the UK, being in water is not a walk in the park at all. It's not a simple 9 to 5 job at the best of times. And I've met more than one employee of Thames Water who have been extremely worried about things happening. It's not necessarily existential problems, but what happens around the water supply in any country induces anxiety at times, and those people had it written on their faces how serious some of those threats are. So applying for a job here is not a straightforward exercise. It's not about switching a tap on and off. It can involve having to deal with those human events, those human causes, human pressures that come at such an essential business activity. As to the future of Thames Water, I mean, in my opinion, it's going to be something simpler than private equity firms. I don't think it's necessary to involve them. That seems like a very heavy-handed approach. It is a lot of money. I think Thames Water is in debt to the tune of 20 billion. I believe they received a bailout of 3 billion recently this year. They're in a lot of debt. It's a serious situation for them. Water is not going to stop being supplied, but as a company, as a business entity, that's not a great position to find yourself in. If they nationalize, they lose their business activity. If they find people to bail them out, to take over, their activity changes, and also that would bring in new types of management. So they may find their job is different. That may be the preferable option. I know that people who've worked for Thames Water before are very professional, they're very business-like. They prefer to keep things going as a business rather than as an essential national service. Um, but it will have to go where the wind is blowing. I mean, it may be that people in government want to rein it in, want to make sure that it is safe, that our water supply is not going to be compromised, and they may feel more at ease if it is under government ownership for a period of time. You may have heard that a bank has recently been released out of government hands. It had been saved during a financial crisis, if I can remember, because it threatened to go under. That's the type of dynamic that could be involved. It may be brought into government ownership for a period of time. It may stay in government hands, it may not. But that's just to make sure that water can continue, that supplies can continue, because it isn't just water supply to people living at home. It means that there is more involved, more paperwork, if you like, in other words, to this type of business than you would think if it were just a domestic water service. There's a lot more to it because it supplies sensitive sites, because it supplies communal sites, because it supplies business sites, those types of activity. Hello, is there Ole? Thames Water finished. They think about money, not the people and animals. There is some controversy over its management of waterways and also the fact of high levels of pollution. I've not personally checked out the statistics on river pollution and on sewage release. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I don't necessarily trust statistics about that implicitly. I know that people I've spoken to wouldn't allow that to happen by policy, and it wouldn't happen because of a lapse of memory. Um, but that's not to say that others may be overlooking that part in different departments of the company. Um, I don't think it's easy to be ambitious when you're pumping water around the place. I don't think there's an issue with corporate crime in the sense of stealing large amounts of money. It certainly wouldn't be their fault if that had taken place. What I tried to illustrate and what an article on the website tries to explain is there have been more than one issue surrounding water supply in the United Kingdom. This is just one example, remember. There are other companies that are also in difficulty, and they may have their own stories internally of the difficulties they face. It's an obvious point to make, but it doesn't always come out in some people's reporting that water is something that is an issue of national security. And so when there's a problem with multiple companies, we might need to question or vocalize concerns over the security of our water supply and whether water companies that are private should be running it. I don't know how easy it is for a private company to receive help to secure the supply. I know that Thames Water operates security rooms. I know that they've had some stresses and cyber attacks on those security control rooms. Um, we'll have to see if those come back online fully in the near future. But I don't know how easy it is for private companies to establish that they need help when they need it. I don't know if the lines of communication are the same. If it were in public hands, would it be more immediate? Is that fair? Is that less fair? Shouldn't it just be there if they need it because it's water? Those are some bigger questions about water supply in this country. But a number of states are guilty or suspected of trying to interfere with companies like this, not just here in the south, but also in the north of the country and further into Scotland, also Wales and Northern Ireland. So, in fact, the United Kingdom has had to look at water security intensely in recent times. It's had to look at why states would try to target it. It's had to question what type of methods are being used. Some efforts are dissuaded or just easily dealt with without it becoming a formal emergency. Other types of attempts are more serious and are leveled directly at water suppliers who give us our water out of our tap, showers, toilet, and laundry, that sort of thing. They're leveled more directly, and those obviously taken very seriously. There's not a lot of information at the moment as to how much this has played a role in Thames Water losing track of its finances, losing track of repairs, losing track of sewage, if that is an issue, sewage dumping, as it may be called. It's not clear yet I haven't got the paperwork with me. It's not clear yet how much of a problem that's been for it in its recent corporate history. In my opinion, this is just my suspicion, it would have played a large role. I mean, it's just because of where it is. It is serving water in the United Kingdom. In this country, things have been less secure for companies like this recently, and that means that it will suffer. Whether that 20 billion or so is due to oversights caused by these disruptions is I'm not sure. I mean, it's a private company, it doesn't have to gush out details to us, but it may have played a role in that. Obviously, it also employs people, it recruits its own staff. People apply if they feel like they're good enough. They can join a team at Thames Water. That recruitment is open, it's transparent. People are able to apply themselves, transfer their skills over from a previous job, and work at Thames Water. Um, I don't know if that helps or hinders. I don't know if it should be national service to pump water around. I don't know whether it should be a part of the government's essential programs, whether it supplies water because we need it and we pay a subsidy or some type of subscription charge for it. There are different models that exist for the supply of water, but there are more considerations than price. Sometimes we have to keep paying a high price because it's a more secure way of doing it. If a cheaper way is found that is more secure than the expensive way at the moment, that would obviously be preferable. But sometimes we carry on with high prices because, as the state of things go, it is the safest way of doing it. Whether that's true, whether prices need to go up for that reason, I can't say for definite. But I know that across many different types of business activity, the reason why prices are stubbornly high is because at the moment it's the safest way for that sector or industry to do it. I don't know if water companies have to work together. I don't know if they collaborate. I don't know if they. I've not heard of any mergers necessarily. I might have done. It slipped my mind at this present time. Um, but it seems to be that things are tight sometimes because of those security measures that are needed. Things have to stay still for some time. Excuse the pun, but stuff has to stay where it is until it's freed up, until it's safer. Through doing some of my own research, I know that water has featured highly in criminal circles in recent times in terms of their focus. Water involves sea travel, it involves yachting. Water involves obviously selling water supplies. It's also a really big part of manufacturing. Water is also very important for farming. And water comes up in environmental debates, in conventions, and also campaigns too. So if there's water in somebody's political issues, sometimes they're pressed in on by crime gangs too. But water is found everywhere. It's also inside our bodies. It's useful for medicine. It's useful for scientific research. That is why crime gangs sometimes focus on it because it is virtually everywhere. And so it is one way that they can try to brute force their way into our infrastructure. They can try to hack our way of life by challenging the use of water and also the supply of water. I've it's after I've looked at Thames Water to begin with as I was starting my work. Later on, I also checked back in on it because I had heard some concerns about this sort of activity. Criminal activity around utility companies is dangerous. It's not easy to get near to those who are doing it. I've been able to, and they're not friendly, nice people. They're not hospitable. That you're not able to relate to those sorts of people, they're usually in a very chaotic frame of mind. They're usually combative. They're usually very difficult because they're defensive over what they're doing. And also, their presence, while not being specifically known, is assumed because of various things that go on around them. And it makes it a very worrying time for some people that work in security. They're just not sure what is going to happen. Usually, they're followed up and usually they're found, but it takes some time and it means they're here in the meanwhile. When crime comes up against water, when crime comes up against electricity, when crime comes up against simple things like heating, there are serious things that people need to do because it can become very serious. The situation can evolve into a national emergency potentially if it isn't dealt with soon enough. Not every crime gang has the potential to cause that much trouble in terms of a nationwide issue, um, but what they're trying to do, if there's some if they have hit lucky, and also if they find help, it could escalate to that level. It's unlikely, but it could head in that direction. So it's important to try to deal with it as soon as people know that there's a problem around. Sometimes they try to attack the infrastructure of a water company first in order to have a look at what it's doing. It needs to see its operations. It can't do it by looking at people fixing a pipe. It can't do it by looking at your water bill. It needs to press in on the company itself. It needs to find its key operations and it needs to observe. And that social human type of hacking means that some people are backed away. It means that some people feel under pressure. It means that some people have to stop their work for a short time while those individuals are sorted out because it does cause a bit of disruption. Where it's coming from, who it is, how serious their effort is not clear to begin with. Um, but it has the potential to become something more extreme. It has the potential to be an emergency. And so it has to be looked into. As you can see, it is in a very public area. There's a main road here at both directions. It isn't hidden away. Water companies do not operate out of secure facilities. It's not as if I'm standing 1,000 meters away and there's a checkpoint between me and the building. It is just here. That means that some of its operations are spread out in other parts of the country, probably regionally more than nationally. It means that the way that it's done is less concentrated, and it also suggests a way that business is conducted, that there is a building like this, that is the headquarters, that is just a place to work in. It suggests a way that things are conducted here too. Now, if you know anything about security, if you know anything about crime, you'll already be able to guess the certain dynamics that exist around it, the certain pressures it feels, and what is involved in trying to get rid of people that are causing trouble just by the way it's set up. It can involve large numbers of people trying to hack a water company, but we are a large number of people. Resources can be drawn from across the country, and people can work on it remotely from wherever they are in the UK. It's important that we deal with it. It's important the United Kingdom is dealing with it, that people are working inside the country because it's that essential to the way we live and to our existence here. Um, we have to rely a lot on ourselves when it comes to the water supply. So it's essential that it's kept here, that people are dealing with any problems here. But it takes time. I've known people to receive briefings about gun crime because some people, we haven't necessarily across it yet here, but some people have been threatened at gunpoint in some parts of the world over water supply. And so it can be a very high level briefing that some people receive when they have to get involved in order to secure a water company like Thames Water. It'd be interesting to see what the decision is on this company. It's a lot of money. It's a large amount of debt. To me, it's suspicious. But it'd be interesting to see what the next step is they're going to take. My caution would be that, as they would be fully aware, people causing trouble, trying to disrupt the network is more of a problem than we previously imagined. And that's not to do with the way the company is run, that's to do with the way that things are in the country itself. I think things are getting better. There's been less activity in terms of insecurity around these utility networks recently. That's not to say it could get worse in future, um, but it's got a good period of time in which to try and make a decision over where it goes next and what it does with itself. But this is a major issue. I know it's a sticking point for a lot of voters. I know that it's a major issue for a lot of consumers. They're very worried that something as fundamental and as forgettable as water keeps coming up. We don't need to think about water supply, surely. We just keep paying a bill, a small bill, and we get on with it. Um, but it's a concern to people when stuff like this is struggling. But we need to involve the criminal aspect to the element of adverse activity. It puts pressure very easily on some types of service provision. Way back in the corporate history of the United Kingdom, telecoms companies also had issues like this and came under extremely severe attack. So it may be water at the moment, it could be something else next. Who knows? But the UK as a country comes under attack, and unfortunately, without meaning to, staff of some companies also feel the impact of it. But that's part of that's one of the stories at the moment. Thames Water finding itself in financial difficulty. It's looking to find its way out of that. It received a bailout recently, 3 billion, I believe. One offer from a firm called KKR has fallen through. There's another attempt by some bondholders to take over. I'm not sure that's going to go through. They seem very exotic types of office for a simple company such as Thames Water. We'll have to see if nationalisation comes onto the table at some point. It may not be that a Labour government wants water to have to deal with. It may want to deal with other issues pressing, but it just goes to show that sometimes vital infrastructure, whether private or public, coming under pressure is a serious issue.